My wife's secret was hidden in a navy scarf. It wasn't the rain-soaked scarf draped over the kitchen chair that scared me. It was the fact that I knew, without a shred of doubt, that my wife had never owned it, and yet it smelled like the story she'd been keeping from me. Good evening. If you've stumbled upon this story tonight, I want you to picture we're sitting at the same worn kitchen table, the tide humming in the distance. Tell me in the comments where you're listening from. It makes the telling feel less lonely. And if what you hear stirs something in you, don't just carry it in silence. Share it. Someone out there might be waiting for the words you've been holding back. Stay with me until the end. The last 5 minutes will turn the whole story on its head. We live in a small seaside town where time is kept by tides, not clocks. I'm Mark, 42, and I fix boats that have seen more winters than I have. My shop sits at the edge of the marina, next to the bait place people swear has the worst coffee and the best gossip. My wife, Emily, is the kind of woman people whisper, "lucky man," about at weddings. She works at the library, knows the names of kids who don't read yet, and the titles that might make them want to. 17 years of marriage means you memorize each other's footsteps. I used to think you also memorize each other's secrets, but that's not how secrets work. They grow in the quiet parts you stop visiting. For months before the scarf, I felt a distance I couldn't name. Not in what Emily said, but in where her words seemed to come from. Somewhere a little farther off, even when she stood close enough for me to smell the lemon dish soap on her hands. We still did the ordinary graces, texted about groceries, left the porch light on, remembered trash day. But the chords that used to hum under our days went faint. If marriage is a boat, ours didn't hit a rock. It took on water the way old boats do, quietly, invisibly, until one day you're ankle deep and wondering when the floor got wet. The night of the scarf, rain had been falling since noon. By 7, the streets shone black as sealskin, and the pier lights threw long, trembling ladders across the water. I sat at the kitchen table, nursing coffee I didn't need. The front door opened, and the wind escorted Emily inside, hair damp, cheeks bright as if she'd been hurrying. And there it was, a navy scarf I'd never seen before, hand-woven by the look of it, fine silver threads catching the light like fish scales. I know my wife's closet like I know the hulls I work on, the places that hold, the seams that need attention. I've bought half her scarves myself, from the gift shop that wraps everything like a secret. This one didn't belong to our life. She unwound it, hung it lightly on the back of a chair, and started in about the library's heating again, the boiler wheezing, kids stomping in with wet shoes, Mrs. Dalrymple insisting on the window because fresh air cures every cough. Her voice was breezy, but a scent drifted up from the scarf. Not her perfume. Not mine. A warm, expensive cologne that lingered even after breath was gone. She went upstairs to change. I picked up the scarf because men like me touch things to understand them. The weave was tight and patient, the way careful hands make time visible. My fingers found a small inner pocket stitched in, the sort sailmakers sew to tuck a wax block. Odd for a scarf. There was a slip of paper inside. A receipt. Harborview Cafe. Date. Today. Time, 5:42 p.m. A town over. She'd told me she was cataloging a new donation until 6. She came back down in one of my old sweatshirts, damp hair twisted into a clip. I put the scarf back exactly as I'd found it. We ate leftover chowder and pretended television could hold our attention. When she laughed at something I didn't hear, I watched the laugh land on the table between us and fail to bloom. I didn't ask that night. I am not a man who interrupts his life to demand answers. Maybe I should be. Maybe that's how boats become museums. No one has the nerve to sail them once they're restored. Over the next week, I became a quiet detective in my own marriage. Her phone lived face down on the counter. Thursdays, she stayed late, an extra meeting that never made it to the calendar. She smiled to herself sometimes, like a person remembering a joke they can't retell. I started keeping lists in my head and swore I wasn't the kind of man who kept lists. The following Thursday, I closed the shop early and drove to Harborview. The rain was a mist that pretended to be gentle while soaking everything it touched. I parked across from the cafe and watched the window. People came and went in coats that made them bigger, the way winter asks us to armor up. Then, there she was, Emily, hair swept back, the navy scarf draped over the chair like a familiar hand. Across from her sat a man I didn't know. Silver hair, pressed shirt, an ease that read as practiced. They didn't touch. They didn't lean in. But her face had that open softness I knew from a long time ago, before mortgages and grief taught us to hold back in small ways, so we had enough to survive the big ones. I didn't go in. I was raised by a father who believed privacy was respect, and by the time I learned the ways privacy becomes silence, it was already our habit. I drove home with the wipers knocking like knuckles on wood, every sound asking a question I wasn't ready to answer. The scarf stayed on the kitchen chair like a polite guest. She never wore it around me after that, but she didn't put it away either. Some things hide best in plain sight. When I finally asked, it wasn't elegant. It was a Thursday again. Rain again. This town has a favorite ritual. She came in later than usual, hair plastered to her forehead, keys slipping from her hand to the bowl with a musical clatter. I picked up the scarf and met her at the bottom of the stairs. "This yours?" There are moments when a face telling the truth looks like a face lying. Her gaze pinged from the scarf to my mouth and back, as if the object might begin to speak and save her. "Where did you—" "It's been here," I said. "I figured you'd notice I noticed." She sat down on the stairs like her bones had remembered gravity too suddenly. For a long minute, the house did the living for us. The fridge hummed, the heat clicked on, the rain threaded itself finer. "His name is Richard," she said finally. "He taught a seminar I took senior year. We kept in touch on and off. He moved back 6 months ago." I pictured this man stepping back into our county like someone returning a borrowed book decades late. No fine enforced because the librarian remembers your mother. "And the scarf?" "He gave it to me that first week. It started raining and he—" Her voice stuttered. "He said he'd always pictured me in blue." I didn't know which part to pick up without breaking the rest. "Are you with him?" She shook her head too quickly, then too slowly. "Not like that," she said. "Not physically." The word felt clinical in her mouth. "We had coffee. We talked. I didn't go looking for it, Mark." She swallowed. "I've been lonely." That last sentence unlatched a door I'd nailed shut. People think loneliness comes from being alone. Sometimes it comes from being unseen. I had prided myself on showing up, working, fixing, making sure the lights stayed on and the car didn't rattle. I had mistaken maintenance for love. "Do you love him?" I asked, hating my voice for coming out smaller than my body. "I don't know. I don't think so." She covered her face with both hands. "It felt like remembering a version of myself I lost. He made me feel." She didn't finish. She didn't have to. Seen. The word hung between us like something fragile we might both destroy by moving too fast. I didn't yell. I wanted to. Anger is easy and looks impressive, but I've learned anger is a life jacket you put on to avoid learning how to swim. I said the only thing I could say without cheapening it. "Are you done?" She became a study in indecision. "I want to be," she whispered. "I don't know how to close the door on a room I thought I'd never see again." That night I slept in the guest room, where the sheets smell like detergent that promises oceans. I dreamed of a boat untied from its cleat, drifting. In the morning, she left coffee on the counter and went to the library without goodbye. My cup was full. Our life wasn't. This is where most stories choose a fork: rage or forgiveness, demolition or renovation. Real life roams a longer hallway lined with doors you aren't ready to open. 3 days later, Mrs. Morgan brought me a skiff that needed a new transom and asked if I had heard about Richard Hale coming back. People say names like they're passing you an envelope. "He's the one lost his wife last winter," she added, as if the backstory might soften his outline. That night, I asked Emily straight, "Is he the widower?" She nodded. His wife had cancer. He cared for her for 2 years. She looked at the floor. "He's not a villain, Mark." Grief recognizes its own. 3 years ago, our daughter was born sleeping. No one tells you how quiet love can be when it enters the room as absence. Emily and I grieved in different dialects. Hers wanted company. Mine wanted a workshop with a radio turned up loud enough to drown God. We didn't break. We bent into shapes that didn't fit together. "Do you talk about her? With him?" I asked. "Sometimes." Her fingers worried the edge of a napkin. "Mostly he talks about the small things, how she hated pears, how she'd sing to the dog. Sometimes we talk about our daughter." She looked at me then, a quick, painful look. "I didn't know how to talk to you about it without making you drown." There it was, a sentence that contained both apology and accusation, and asked me to hold both without spilling either. The next week, I followed a storm out to the marina, my habit when my head won't stop shouting. Waves slapped pilings with impatient hands. I checked lines, retied one, sawed a length of rope for a man who still calls me kid, though I'm gray at the temples. When I got home, the scarf was gone from the chair. I should have felt relief. Instead, I felt like a room whose window had been shut while I was out. The air different, a little stale. Sunday evening, I found the scarf again, folded in my top dresser drawer on top of my t-shirts. There was a note tucked in the pocket, my name on the outside. Inside, Emily's handwriting I know from grocery lists and birthday cards. I don't know how to talk without breaking something. I didn't go looking for the part of me that woke up. It scared me. It still does. I haven't crossed the line you're imagining, but I crossed others I'm ashamed of. I've been angry at you for the ways you keep your hurt so tidy I can't find the door to help. I've been angry at me for needing anything at all. Today in church, the pastor said grace is an unearned second wind. I don't deserve one, but I want to try to breathe again. With you, if you're willing. If you need to leave, I will understand. If you need time, I can give it. If you need me to cut this off, I will. I already have. I told him I can't meet again. He gave me the scarf and said, "Keep it." You looked warm in it. Maybe that's all any of us want. To look warm. I'm sorry. I'm here if you want me to be. I sat on the edge of our bed and read it twice, then pressed the paper flat against my knee as if smoothness could be restored by will. People say trust is a vase you glue back together, and maybe they're right, but I think it's more like a shoreline. The water comes in and redraws the edge. You are still the land. You are not the same land. I didn't answer with a grand speech. I wrote one sentence on the back. I want us to try, but not the way we've been trying. I placed it on her pillow. That night, she went to bed before me, and when I finally lay down, she was turned toward the wall, breathing the deep breaths of someone practicing sleep. I didn't touch her. Touch felt like a language I needed to relearn. 3 days after her letter, I found myself staring at the scarf again. It lay folded in my drawer, looking harmless. Too harmless. That Saturday, an old friend from high school, Claire, called to say she was in town visiting her parents. We hadn't seen each other in years, but she'd heard I still made a decent cup of coffee at the shop and wanted to catch up. When I got dressed that morning, my eyes fell on the scarf. It was impulsive, maybe petty, but I picked it up and looped it loosely around my neck. Claire and I met at a little diner by the marina. We talked about the years gone by, the storms that had battered the docks, people we both knew who'd moved away or passed on. At some point, she laughed and said, "You're overdressed for July, Mark," tugging at the end of the scarf playfully. Someone at the next table offered to take a picture of us. I didn't think much when I posted it on Facebook that evening, just good to catch up with old friends. The scarf was visible, draped over my shoulder, Claire leaning in with that easy smile of someone who's known you forever. It took less than an hour for Emily to see it. She didn't mention it directly, but I noticed her glance at me over dinner, then at the scarf hanging back on the chair. I could almost hear the question she didn't ask. Why was it with you? Why was it in that picture? I didn't volunteer an explanation, just like she hadn't weeks ago. It wasn't revenge in the sharp sense. No shouting, no accusations. Just a quiet reminder that the feeling of uncertainty cuts both ways. We started counseling. Not the church basement kind where coffee burns and chairs fold, but a woman in town whose office felt like a living room where truth might come sit if you opened a window. She asked us to tell the story of us in 3 chapters, and I hated her a little for making me speak about the middle one, the one after our daughter, when I learned how to fix anything except the leak in my own chest. In those sessions, I learned my particular sin is competence. I can fix a mast in wind, weld a cracked bracket, rebuild a carburetor with my eyes squinted against salt, but I default to solutions when the problem is a person. Emily needed me to sit in the unsolved with her. I had been handing her wrenches. For a while, we moved gently around each other at home, like dancers practicing not to step on toes. We set small rules at the counselor's urging. Phones face up, Thursday evenings together, even if that meant reading in the same room with no talk. Emily would tell me when the ache for the awake part flared, and I would tell her when the quiet inside my head felt like it was pulling me underwater. None of it was perfect. Some nights we did it well. Some nights we were lousy at being human. 2 months into this tender truce, Richard's name came back into the room via other mouths. He had collapsed at the cafe. A stroke. People whispered medical terms like they were discussing a hurricanes category. Someone said he'd been sitting alone. Someone else said a blue scarf was on the chair beside him. The town knows how to embroider. Emily sat at our kitchen table and stared at the steam rising from her mug until it cooled into nothing. "I should send flowers," she said, "but that feels wrong." "What feels right?" I asked. It's a question our counselor taught me, to ask and mean it, not ask and fix. "Nothing," she said. "Everything." She laughed without joy. "That part of me that woke up? I don't want it to die. I just want it to live here." We sent a card, wishing you strength for the hours that ask for more than you think you have. No signature beyond our names lined up in a row like a small family does, not because they're perfect, but because they're trying. Grief arrived anyway because that's what grief does, not for him, for what he had represented, a window propped open in a house that had grown stuffy. We kept our windows open. Sometimes a storm came through. We learned to mop. You might be waiting for the scene where we fall into each other's arms, sanctified and new, or the one where I throw the scarf into the sea and walk away heroic. But the truth is, we did neither. We folded the scarf and put it in a hat box with the letters our counselor had us write to the versions of ourselves we had been. We labeled the box the way the library labels its spines. Reference. Summer slid in, clean and unapologetic. Work swelled with tourists and their proud little boats. On a hot July afternoon, a squall muscled over the bay. the kind that throws a tantrum and then pretends it didn't. A mast snapped on a rented sloop and sent a shard through a boy's forearm. I was on the dock before the yelling reached me. Blood is both less and more than you expect. We had nothing clean at hand. I took off my shirt, but the fabric was gritty from the shop. Emily, who had come down with lemonade, ran to our truck and returned with the hat box. She pulled the scarf out and wrapped the boy's arm with a surgeon's tenderness. It held like cloth is the oldest technology for keeping life in. Later, in the quiet that follows adrenaline, I found the scarf folded on my workbench, a thin salt ring on the wood beneath it where water had dripped. Emily stood in the bay door, hair stuck to her temples, eyes tired and bright. "We can throw it away," she said, "if having it hurts you." I shook my head. "It helped someone," I said. "Maybe that's what it was for." Saying it, I felt something loosen. Not a permission slip for the past, not a pardon, but a reweaving of threads. The scarf wasn't the villain of our story. The silence was. That night, we sat on the back steps and watched the sky try out colors it couldn't keep. Emily touched my forearm like she was checking the temperature. "Do you ever think," she whispered, "that we survived something that could have broken us mostly by refusing to pretend we weren't hurt?" "Every day," I said, "also by learning to ask each other better questions." She nodded. "What's your question tonight? What do you need tomorrow that you didn't get today?" She thought a long time. "For you to call me at noon for no reason." "That I can do," I said. "What about you?" "I need to take your hand when we cross a street, even when it's empty." We walked to the diner later for pie because doing small, ordinary things after large, extraordinary days is how you teach your nervous system. There is still pie in the world. We held hands at corners like teenagers trying on the future. I'd like to tell you that we never spoke Richard's name again. But names you attach to awakening do not vanish at your convenience. Months later, we learned he'd moved to live near his sister. We sent a postcard with a lighthouse on it. "Be gentle with yourself. No return address. Some gestures aren't about response. If you've stayed with me this long, thank you. I'm not sure what this story has made you feel, but if it's reminded you of a scarf of your own, an object that became a mirror, I hope you'll tell someone the truth before it hardens into a wall. And if you need to talk it out loud, my comment section has more kindness than you'd expect from the internet on a Tuesday. We still keep the scarf, not on the chair, not in the drawer, in the hat box on a closet shelf we can both reach. Sometimes in winter, when the wind sneaks through the window frame and the house remembers every crack it has ever had, Emily wraps it around her shoulders while we read. The cologne is long gone. It smells like wool and salt and something I can't name that lives between forgiveness and accountability. People like to end stories with a moral. I'll end with an image. On storm mornings, when the sky is the color of old pewter, I walk the dock with a coil of rope on my shoulder. I check every knot, retie the ones that look proud of themselves, because proud knots are the first to slip. I listen to the hulls creak and the water slap and the gulls complain. And I think, this is marriage. Not the vows in the church or the photograph where everyone blinked at the wrong time. This. Ordinary maintenance with reverence. Small repairs made before failure. Honest inventory of what's frayed. A scarf becomes a bandage. A receipt becomes a letter. A man who thought fixing things was love learns that sometimes love is sitting in the unsolved. A woman who thought being seen meant being chosen learns that being seen at home is the bravest choosing there is. We didn't mend perfectly. We mended honestly. The fabric holds, different pattern, same thread count. When the wind howls, we move closer on the couch without pretending we aren't a little afraid. And when we cross the street, even the empty ones, she reaches for my hand. I let mine be reached for. If this found you at the right time, you know it. Tell me where you're listening from. Tell me the one small repair you'll make tonight. And if you need a sign to try again, here it is. Be gentle with yourselves. The tide always returns. So can you.